you might hit a wall, you know, shit could hit the fan. But if you can navigate this with gratitude, I promise you, you are going to be better off.
I had kids who had been in the weight room for maybe 2 months worth of experience. I've had kids who've been in a weight room since they were age 12.
When you have strong convictions in what you believe, it becomes very natural to follow through and live that out with integrity.
I think also they're perhaps more likely to open up because we can empathize with them. And I think all of that plays into how student athletes show us their vulnerable side more so than they might another staff member.
Again, if you can fail with gratitude but succeed with grit, this whole journey is going to be a whole lot easier.
That you talked, your whole topic was about being authentic, because I feel like every single time I've seen you present or just seen you talk, I've walked away thinking, man, she's real, you know? So I just thought it was funny. It was a perfect topic for you. So great job. So I have the pleasure of introducing our last speaker, Coach Jeanne Rankin. And Coach Rankin has over a decade's worth of experience in the field of strength and conditioning. And she is now currently the Director of Strength and Conditioning at Eastern Connecticut State University. So when I was doing my research on Coach Rankin, I found a couple of things that I thought were really interesting about her. So one is that she has an awesome French bulldog named Jeanne. And as a dog lover, great. And two, in a couple of the podcasts I listened to, that I noticed that she really valued the collaborative effort it takes working with your sport coaches. And I just think that's an incredibly important factor when you're trying to build a program that's best for your athletes. So without further ado, Coach Rankin, the floor is yours. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Well, Kevin, I appreciate that introduction, and I definitely am glad that that personality kind of came through those different platforms. So let me go ahead and get this all set up before I start talking here. All right, so kind of like everybody else has jumped in, I would like to say, thank you to IU Strength for having me on. This has been a great platform during quarantine, and it's fun to actually, be asked to present on this stuff and kind of share stuff that I'm very passionate about. So I was happy that I was going last here. It gives me time to sit back and listen to everybody else's presentations. But I thought it was kind of funny that I'm bringing up the back, just like I always did in college too. I played soccer. I think Sarah Ramey, one of my former strength coaches from college, is on this call. And Ramey would know that I always brought up the back in conditioning. So doing it here as well. So presentation today is about diversity in strength and conditioning. This is something that's always been important to me, but I think especially now with everything that's going on in the country, seemed like a great time to talk about it. So topics we'll cover today: why diversity is important in our field, what is the current landscape, how do we do better, and then lastly, kind of like a few people were saying previously, 10 minutes is kind of a small time frame. It's a new challenge for me. I'm a talker. So if anybody wants to follow up on this stuff, I'll have my contact info at the end. Definitely feel free to reach out in any sort of capacity. But really, like I said, I just want to spark some dialogue. I've seen some threads on different Twitter feeds and things like that that got me thinking, some experience I have as a female have been very similar to what maybe I've seen for Black strength and conditioning coaches in the field, and just things that, different minorities might deal with. All right, so first kind of going over why diversity is important. So I've got some statistics here. I kind of stole them from Brittany Collins' presentation. It was last Wednesday at the University of Cincinnati Women's Clinic. And I want to bring up with that too. First off, I want to give her credit for finding these stats, and then I cited them at the end. But I think we sometimes tend to shy away from stuff we don't view as our own thing. So there weren't a ton of men in on this clinic, and I would encourage more men to join in on it. You know, in strength and conditioning, we're always challenged to learn about programs we don't understand and talk to people that maybe we don't agree with. And I'd say the same thing here. You know, if you want to get more of a female perspective on things, not that that's what the clinic was all about, but hop in on that stuff, talk to me, you know, reach out to anyone you know. I know that, for example, with the racial tension that's going on in the country, I find it my duty to kind of research and educate myself on that stuff. So my wife and I have bought a handful of books that we plan on rolling through. But just kind of encouraging people to kind of go outside of what they know. I will also say, if you want to view that presentation, just get a hold of someone on the Olympic strength and conditioning staff, and they're more than happy to help you guys out with that. So the 2017 statistics, these blew my mind when I saw these. So 1 in 10 young people experienced a period of major depression. Young adults aged 18 to 25, which is the age group that we work with, had the highest prevalence of mental illness at about 1 in 4. And then you can see the statistics for adults and 50 and older. And then this is speaking on adolescents, but nearly 1 in 3 adolescents in the US meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder. That blew my mind. I had no clue the statistics were like that. So it did definitely open my eyes to all that. Kind of playing off that, so some extra stressors for our student athletes. They've got financial stress, performance, pressure to win, academics, missing classes and tests for team travel, social life, lack of sleep, poor nutritional habits. And if you know how much lack of sleep can contribute to things like anxiety and poor nutritional habits, becomes a pretty big deal. I did want to hit on too, just extra stressors for minority groups. So I think if we don't understand some of those extra stressors right now with everything that's going on in the world or in the US, then it's time to really dive deep into this stuff. But on the female side, dating violence, sexual assault, and sexual harassment are some things that a lot of that women might have to deal with. I had presented for the CSECA virtual clinic, and I found a statistic. It was something around 90% of women in the US claim to have been sexually harassed. So just thinking about that stuff as you work with your female athletes and then, you know, any female coworkers, those are some pretty alarming numbers to consider. As far as racial minorities, you know, talking about microaggressions and stereotypes. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but the whole, you know, I think it was surrounding something LeBron James had said, just telling professional athletes to shut up and dribble and stuff like that. So just considering all those things that our athletes and our coworkers deal with. So after that, strength and conditioning coaches spend a lot of time with student athletes. Kind of goes into why diversity is important. Strength and conditioning coaches do not decide playing time. And I think all that kind of plays into how student athletes might show us their vulnerable side more so than they might another staff member. I think also they're perhaps more likely to open up because we can empathize with them. So one thing that a lot of us can connect to is injury. A lot of us strength coaches or former athletes maybe have been injured. I did my ACL in college, and I haven't had very many, knock on wood, kids who tore their ACL, but they know they've got someone that they can talk to that's got good perspective on that stuff and who can really empathize with them. I also have had a female athlete come up and talk to me because she thought she was kind of developing an eating disorder. Had another athlete talk to another female coworker about dating violence. And both of those athletes did, you know, state that they wouldn't have been comfortable coming up to a male strength coach. And then, you know, most of their coaching staff, if not all, was a male. One thing I'm very open and honest about, and already have been, I think, during this presentation, is just that I'm in a same-sex marriage. So I've been the first person that a handful of student athletes have come out to. And it was important for them to be able to express that to someone in a very, very safe environment. And then I'll kind of touch on two racial minorities. you know, I have pretty open discussions with a lot of my kids about that stuff. But I do not think that, you know, one of my Black or Hispanic Latino athletes would discuss their deep, dark fears with me. I think you tend to discuss those issues with people who look a little bit more like you. And so even if they don't know my own personal experiences, they might be more likely to discuss that stuff with people who look like them. And so the reason this is really important, especially right now, is we're looking at these mental illness, depression, anxiety rates, and they're going to be going up. I think everybody understands those are going up right now amidst everything that's going on in this country. So now that we've talked about why diversity is important, I want to kind of go over quickly what the current landscape is. So gender, and I got these statistics from the NCAA website. Male strength coaches, 85% of our college, and this is across all divisions, strength coaches are males, 15% are female, and then you compare that to the student athlete population, where we've got 56% male and 44% female. So just kind of highlighting the difference there. You know, when you compare those two things, and I'm not saying that they need to be equal, but it is important, I think, to highlight that stuff, that the representation of male strength coaches is 30% higher, about 30% higher than the student athlete population. And on the flip side, for females, it's about 30% lower. Okay, so looking at race and ethnicity, I think these slides will be up later. And like I said, I got them from the NCAA website. What I want to highlight mostly is if you look at Black strength coaches, 14% of NCAA strength coaches are Black, and 21% of our student athletes across all divisions are Black. So if you're thinking about a staff of 13 people, that would be one person on staff. Sorry, the difference with that is 7%. So if you had a staff of 13 people, if you changed that ratio and added one strength coach, that would bump it up 7%. That might, hopefully that came across okay. And then looking at the non-resident alien, only thing I want to bring up with that, because if you can see strength and conditioning coaches, it's 0.4%, whereas student athletes it's 6%, is how many of us have ever thought about hiring a strength and conditioning coach from a different country to work for our university? I know sometimes there's paperwork to go through, but we do have a lot of us have a good number of international student athletes, and I think potentially it could help them to have a international strength and conditioning coach. All right, so the meat of my talk. Sorry, I'm going over already. I'm going to try to blow through this. So how do we get better? First off, I want to say I'm not saying anybody should go out there and fire people on their staff. That's not what I'm saying to do. I'm asking us to all kind of look at this stuff through a little bit different lens, okay? So I think this really sparked in my head when, I was told kind of coming into the field, there aren't many good females out there. And that always used to frustrate me. And I would say there's plenty of females in the field at this point. And I'm gonna go into how we kind of help different minorities along. But one of my favorite quotes that I've seen recently is from Maya Angelou. It's do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So what I'm just kind of asking is that we use this information and move forward with it. Okay. So educate yourself. We've been hearing that a lot recently. Identify why diversity is important. So I would say having women on staff is important to get a female perspective on things, whether that's body image issues, whatever it might be. But also there's male and female athletes who are raised in a mother-only home, and perhaps they respond a little bit better to having a female in charge. Another minority, having a Black strength and conditioning coach is just dealing with having a perspective on what our Black athletes might deal with on a daily basis. Like we talked about the microaggressions and stuff like that, just having a little bit of that perspective. And then just like having a female, you know, it's a good role model to have. It's, you know, someone who's an authority figure showing those athletes, hey, if you work hard, you can get to this, you can be a strength coach, you can have the impact that I do on a daily basis. So identify the struggles for each minority. I cover a lot of that on my presentation that I did for the CSCCA, so I don't want to touch on that way too much, but I do think it's important to really look into that stuff. I kind of relate it back to one of the big struggles being a female is the salary. You know, I've had on an interview before had someone say, hey, I find it really important to have a female on staff. And then I realized he left it to his last hire, which was going to be the least amount of money. And so I would just kind of ask everyone, and myself included, to look at that and say, hey, if that's really important to you, then don't leave it for the last hire. And identifying our own personal biases. So just one I read on my virtual presentation for the CSCCA was from the book Untamed, and it was talking about shampoo labels and how even there it's saying that men are supposed to be dominant on a man's shampoo bottle, but on a women's shampoo bottle, it's talking about how you should be more submissive. So there's a lot of areas of our lives that we get those biases from, and I think it's really important to kind of look into that stuff. So going into hiring, so actively seek out young minority strength and conditioning coaches for internships. So really kind of working to bring those people on board, actively seek them out for full-time positions, and then have a list of minority strength and conditioning coaches for when you get a call about an opening. If you have questions on how to do that, I would just say the best answer is that we all need to network a little bit better. You know, you should know, you know, a person of multiple different racial backgrounds that you can reach out to if you have an opening, if you know of an opening, and all that type of stuff. Visibility, having minorities in leadership roles. So whether you've got a minority on staff who's the intern coordinator who has a big impact on the next generation of strength and conditioning coaches, whether you have a minority on your staff present in an all-staff meeting so that your entire athletics department gets to see how good they are presenting, how much stuff they know, all that type stuff. And then encouraging those people on your staff to present at conferences and events, just like you're kind of seeing today. Mentorship, so supporting minorities, and that might be financially. So I will say that the cheap, easy way to do it, cold call a respected minority in the field. So I know previous strength coaches that I've worked with, if they've got a female intern, they say, hey, call Coach Rankin, you know, she'll put you on a good path, and I'm more than happy to talk to those people. There are also some different memberships that you can get, whether it's women's leaders or We Coach. Those things cost money. And if you're making $30,000 a year, sometimes it's hard to pay for that stuff. So if able, maybe offering up that you can help pay for that. Training, so staff training, cultural education, diversity training. I think that's something we're all learning that a lot of our universities haven't done a good job with. So figuring out how you can get some better training on that. I will say one person I've started following recently is Jeanne, and if you'd like that information, please get in touch with me. But also partnering with your diversity and inclusion group on campus can help out a lot. Just continuing to talk and be vulnerable and showing people that you don't know everything, but you're willing to learn. And then just like we do with our athletes, setting goals and objectives. So if you have a goal in mind of what you want your staff to be like and what you want your staff to look like, start setting out goals, whether you're a director right now or whether you want to be a director in the future, start really looking at that stuff. And the last thing I kind of want to go over with that slide is that we tend to talk about the best hire being the person who, you know, is book smart, kind of has the X's and O's. And I think maybe just kind of changing our lens with that and realizing that some people have really good life experiences. And so maybe those different life experiences are what actually qualify you to be a better strength and conditioning coach. Okay, I went way over my time. Sorry about that. There's my contact information. That's my cell phone number. Please reach out to me anytime. I can email these slides and I think they'll be posted later. And there's just some quick references there.
Coach, I want to thank you so much. Incredible topic that needs to be talked about, especially during this time, but not only this time. You know, this is something that we're trying to make better within the world of strength conditioning, but also throughout all professions. So thank you so much. To all the speakers, I want to give a huge virtual round of applause. And thank you so much for everything on here. Quick reminders, all these talks are going to be downloaded on Indiana Strength. So I encourage you to tune on in and check them out if you've missed anything. Next week's lineup looks like Cliff Marshall, our IU basketball strength coach, the godfather of speed, Lee Taft, Candace Walls out of Louisiana Lafayette, and Becky Bonaventura from Rutgers, which is going to be another stacked up lineup. So I encourage you, if you don't subscribe already, go to Indiana Strength and subscribe to All Access. And we look forward to seeing you. Till then, make today better than yesterday. And thank you. Coaches, thank you so much on there.